scholars. This is 5-5. We're going to be talking about the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Here's a little chart here for you to be able to look at and be able to identify. We still don't know what type of questions you will have to have on your FRQ, but as soon as you know, I will know. But it is good to keep our quantitative practice skills in check, so I definitely spend a little time doing this. But let's jump into that Second Amendment. All right, I just want you to listen to it first because it's kind of weird. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So yeah, if you were to write this sentence for your English teachers, they're going to tear it apart. And it is a very strangely written sentence. And there have been many questions that have risen out of it, and I think because it is written so strangely, I think that if we had more of a straightforward sentence, then maybe the interpretation would have been easier, but maybe the founders wanted it to be complicated. Y'all know how they are. But the big question we're going to look at as we go through this little section is, does the Second Amendment concern this militia, or like a fighting force, and those fighting forces were usually put forth by the states, or is it about a people's right to self-defense, or is it about both? And I'm just going to let you know, and you'll see as we go through this, that's going to depend on the time and the country's history. So let's look at early amendment cases. All right. So early Second Amendment cases, we get the United States versus Crookshank in 1875, and it was fairly straightforward and is going to sound pretty strange to us, I'm sure. It said the Second Amendment did not apply to the individual and was not protection against the state laws. Okay, so that what they are saying there is they are upholding the front portion of it. All right, what I would call the militia clause. Then we get to Presser about 11 years later, and it says that the Second Amendment only applies to militias that can be regulated by the state. So even like these little small local militias are not going to be able to be accounted for, or I guess what I want you to see for this one is very simply this: is they're reinforcing, hey, what's the most important portion of the Second Amendment? The militia clause, the first half, okay? Early amendments are emphasizing the first half of the Second Amendment, all right? And then we get all the way to 1939 with U.S. versus Miller, and they say, hey, only guns that can be reasonably used by a militia are protected, all right? And I'll let you know that some of these laws that came from U.S. versus Miller, or standards that were set forth in U.S. versus Miller is what I should say, are still in place banning certain weapons. All right? Now, what we got to remember, we started off talking about this. We're going to keep freaking talking about this the whole time. We are balancing with these civil liberties. Is it human or the people's liberty or the public order? All right, and how are we going to keep those things balanced? And depending on the Supreme Court, they're going to tilt different ways at different time periods. So, we're going to jump forward, as you can see, to about 12 years ago. Well, we had this case that came to the forefront of the Roberts Court, D.C. versus Heller. This is not a required court case for you. Okay, you do not have to know this court case. You are going to have to know the one that this set the precedent for, though. Okay. And what this case was very simply about is that D.C. had a ban on handguns within city limits. And we're going to see that the Supreme Court, as you can see here, did two things. One, they said that that law was unconstitutional. And they also said that the Second Amendment guarantees an individual right to gun ownership. All right, so what I want you to see here is this, is they're kind of moving from that first clause and emphasizing the militia to moving down to that last portion. Okay, well, I guess it's broken into four portions, 1, 2, and then 3, 4. And where the first slides that we looked at, we're looking at 1 and 2, we're starting to look more at 3 and 4 specifically 3, the individual rights to bear arms. All right, I will let you know, and I'll just point this down here, look at the bottom. The laws that are used that the justices refer to when they are deciding whether this will be constitutional or not, a lot of the things they are referencing of why the founders meant for individual gun ownership to be a protected right are coming from the 16 and 1700s. And as you can guess, originalists are people who look at the Constitution and interpret it as it was written, not in today's ideas, but as it was. This would probably be an idea that holds up for them. So, I'm just going to go through this real quickly. You just need to know that they did not say, hey, you can own whatever gun you want to, okay? This kind of goes back to the Miller case. They do say yes to handguns, can't get a grenade launcher, all right? Obviously, they're going to say that the government can impose what they call reasonable regulations. One of the things that has been deemed illegal and been upheld by the Supreme Court after several challenges. I think we've had a challenge on it on almost every term since it went into effect, and the court has not even voted to hear the case upholding it. Bump stocks, okay, things that are used to take semi-automatic weapons and make them into automatic weapons, and these kind of came to the forefront of the public attention when we had the Vegas shooting a few years back where the dude was in the hotel room shooting down on a crowd. All right. Obviously, the government can prohibit gun possession in sensitive places, think schools, universities, public areas like parks, churches, etc. All right. Big thing I want you to see here is this, though. It's 2008. We're talking about D.C. Washington, D.C. is a district. That's what the D stands for. It is not a state. So they're not making a comment on what states can do. They are saying this is something that the District of Columbia cannot do because it is an instrument of the federal government. And remember, the Bill of Rights is there to protect people against infringement by the federal government. All right. Now, this is the case you do got to know. All right. McDonald versus Chicago. And this is obviously going to be someone suing the city of Chicago over one of their handgun regulations. And what that regulation pretty much said was this. It's like, hey, if you've got a gun, you've got to register it. If we know anything about Chicago, one thing that probably would be on your top 5 things that at least come to mind, I would think, is that it is kind of a hotbed for violence. All right. And this was especially true in the 70s and 80s. There have been a lot of things done, and that's neither here nor there. But I just need you to know this is in the context of Chicago's violent background that these rules are passed. I believe they're passed in the early 80s or late 70s. All right? And pretty much McDonald, he's a dude in Chicago, he says, hey, if D.C. gets to be able or is protected from federal infringement, shouldn't we as the states also be protected from this? What he is petitioning for is for the Second Amendment to be selectively incorporated, or using the due process portion of the 14th Amendment to apply the Second Amendment so that states cannot make laws that infringe on an individual's right to bear arms. All right? Now, I do want to point out here at the bottom of this as well that you can see that we do have several justices. It is a 5-4 decision. Those in the minority, one of their biggest complaints is very simply this, is that the court is taking firearm regulation from a democratically elected legislative branch. So what they're saying is, hey, what these judges are doing is they're practicing judicial activism. They're doing things that they want done. They're not really following the Constitution, because these rules were made by people who were democratically elected. If the people want these rules changed, they should elect new people who change them on their own. Okay? Please make sure that you get McDonald versus Chicago. This is important. We will do probably a little SCOTUS brief on it. Probably do one over the remaining court cases altogether like we did with the First Amendment ones. I really hope you have done those by the time you're seeing this. I really do. And if you haven't, hop to it. All right. Sorry. This is just a little snippet from the SCOTUS brief you will see from McDonald versus Chicago. If you want to pause here and look at it, you can. But this is just kind of telling you a little bit more on what's going on in the situation, specifically what the majority thinks in the top paragraph and what those who are in dissent are thinking in the second half. All right, so let's get back to our question for a second that we started off with at the beginning, and this is actually where I'll leave you. We're already here at the end of this little section. Does the Second Amendment concern the militia? Top 2 clauses. All right, really that second clause. Or is it about the people's individual rights? Or is it both? Well, if you're looking at the long term of history, yes, it's both. All right? But early on, as you saw with our court cases, Cruikshank, Miller, all of these, you see that it's all about the militia. All right? And because remember, the Bill of Rights is in place to protect states and people from the federal government infringing. It ain't there to, like, protect the people from their states infringing on them. But more recently, we see, excuse me, that individual self-defense becomes the fundamental right that the Supreme Court is focusing on, okay? And one of the big takeaways you have to have about McDonald is that it is the case that selectively incorporates the Second Amendment, meaning, and I will say this before I say that, the Second Amendment as an interpretation of individual rights to own guns, okay? And what I want you to make sure that you understand here, of course, that the Due Process Clause is used always. That is the clause that is used to selectively incorporate. And look, when we say selectively incorporate, this is what I mean. They choose an amendment and they decide, hey, can the states do it or not? Not all of our amendments have been selectively incorporated. If they would have just looked at the Bill of Rights and they're like, hey, states have to follow all of these too, we would have called that, in the term is, you don't need to know this, but here's the political science term. It's called total incorporation, okay? But they do selective, this one. And we'll see with some of our amendments as we go forward, they'll take parts of one, they'll take parts of another, and they'll leave other parts in there, okay? So, here is your list of vocabulary, main things to take away. Make sure you know individual liberty. You see DC versus Heller is on here just as a reference, but make sure, main thing to take away from this is the McDonald versus Chicago case. And I want to draw your attention to one more thing about it. It is a recent case, all right? It is also a case that is very close, 5-4, all right? It kind of reminds me a little bit of Citizens United. But they are both heard by the Roberts Court, first off, but also they are both with the conservative majority making the decision to, in some ways, broaden government for a particular purpose. And as I told you earlier, you want to make sure that you know that the Second Amendment is selectively incorporated by Chicago versus McDonald. Okay, that's our video for today. I'll throw you a bone. Here you go. This is a picture of me as a baby. Yep, I know what you're thinking. Wow, definitely him. I see that forehead. I love y'all. I miss y'all. Here you go.